I don't know how many of you saw this, but I was over yesterday. I was scrolling through, and I don't even know how the algorithm works, but somehow my social media algorithms saw Sydney Sweeney in a tank top and tight jeans at a car, and they were like, hey, let's feed this to Clay. I don't know how that happened. I have no idea how algorithms work. I don't know why they thought a girl in a tight shirt and tight jeans would somehow that I would be like, oh, that video, it just ended up on my timeline. And it turned into a huge story yesterday because a store called American Eagle decided that they were going to sign Sydney Sweeney as their chief spokesperson. And this thing went mega viral. The stock was up like a couple of $100 million since they've announced it. And I was laughing about it because basically the very first job I ever had was working in an American Eagle clothing store. And yesterday going viral, somehow, I don't know how it ended up on my timeline again. I don't know how algorithms work. I don't know why they thought that I would be interested in an attractive woman and not very much clothes. I don't know how that happened. But so Sydney Sweeney, stock is skyrocketing. Thing goes mega viral, somehow ends up on my timeline for my very first job when I was like 16 years old. And you know what they've decided to do? They replaced fat, unattractive models with attractive models. And you're going to think this is ridiculous, but I actually think it's evidence of the culture healing. And let me explain why, and I'll share some funny stories about that job that I used to have back in the day. But do you remember when a few years ago, Victoria's Secret decided, hey, I know the whole Victoria's Secret model thing. You walk it by in a mall and they have a gorgeous woman not wearing very much clothes. And it turns out that putting gorgeous women in not very much clothes convinces women to go buy more underwear than they otherwise would, and like body lotion and whatever else Victoria's Secret sells. And I'm not putting myself out of this category either. My wife still makes fun of me. I watch the Victoria's Secret, like the Christmas special that they have. And then I went and bought like $200 of lingerie like the next day. So yes, I am susceptible to advertising. My wife was like, you bought everything in the whole store, basically. I was like, I think you're going to look amazing in it. And she was like, you watched the Victoria's Secret fashion show, didn't you? And I said, yes. And it was incredibly useful. And there's a lot of men out there that know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, you see an attractive girl in that outfit and you're like, I want my wife or my girlfriend in that attractive outfit. Boom, it works. Because advertising, by and large, is aspirational. People want to look better than they actually do. You ever watch a romantic comedy? It's never the case that the guy and the girl in the romantic comedy are both ugly, because nobody would go. I don't know why. You just don't believe that two really fat people should get together and spend money to go watch it. You want to watch a guy that's typically, sometimes, better looking than you, a woman who's always better looking than the guy deserves. That is like the romantic comedy writ large. And Hollywood knows it, and that's why it works. Somehow Victoria's Secret decided, you know what? I think we'll sell more lingerie if we put fat people in lingerie. I just got to tell you, it didn't work. In fact, the company almost went bankrupt. And then they went back and they said, hey, you know what? We should put more attractive people in our clothes because people want to think that they're going to look more attractive. I'm fat and not particularly good looking. I don't see somebody in an underwear store and think, hey, I want them to look like me. I wish I was in better shape. I wish I was more ripped. That's how everybody is, okay? So American Eagle, where I used to work, they went with the fat model thing, and basically the entire brand collapsed. And so now they're pivoting, and they should fire everybody who said, hey, you know what? We need fat models, unattractive women. Nike did the same thing. Hey, let's put Dylan Mulvaney in a sports bra. Hey, let's put fat people in yoga pants. That'll make people want to buy yoga pants. No, it doesn't work, okay? Throughout history, attractive people, women in particular, in clothing makes people want to buy more clothing. So Sydney Sweeney is now the spokesperson for American Eagle, and this happens almost identical with Nike suddenly deciding, did you guys see Scottie Scheffler won the British Open, the Open Golf Championship over the weekend? his insanely cute toddler kid, I think he's like 10 months old, 11 months old, roughly a year old, was crawling around on the green. And Nike's new advertisement replacing trans people in women's gear, men pretending to be women, and fat people in yoga pants is Scotty Scheffler with his son crawling. And it basically says, you've already won, but now you've won again. Hey, fatherhood is good. It's good to aspire to win a championship, but ultimately the most important job, I certainly feel this way, is when you have kids, raising them to be productive members of society. So I'm looking at that Sydney Sweeney ad because, again, I don't know how it happened, but it ended up in my timeline. And it's reminding me of the 90s when I worked in the American Eagle store and in the Abercrombie & Fitch store back in the day. I made $4.50 an hour at American Eagle, Rivergate Mall, Goodlettsville, Tennessee. $4.50 an hour. Probably the most fun job I've ever had because I was 16, 17, 18 years old, and all I had to do all day long was fold shirts and talk to pretty girls when they walked into the store. I had an excuse to talk to every pretty girl on the north and the east side of Nashville that came to Rivergate Mall. In fact, if you are listening to this right now in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, if you were a cute girl that went into that store between 1996 and 1999, there's an almost 100% chance I hit on you because I had an excuse to walk up and talk to you. That was the best job ever. $4.50. Got to eat Chick-fil-A every day for lunch on my lunch break or my dinner break. Got to just hang out in the mall. Every teenager in America is there at that point in time. And do you know how they sold gear at both American Eagle and Abercrombie & Fitch? Good-looking people in the ads wearing the clothes. And then we entered this weird world. This weird world where we were supposed to pretend that, hey, instead of everybody aspiring to be bigger, stronger, faster versions of themselves or in better shape versions of themselves, that we should all just be body positive. That there should be no aspiration anymore. That the meritocracy shouldn't exist and that we should just take people as they were and put them in ads. And it failed utterly. And I was actually thinking about this not only in the context of what American Eagle is doing and how successful it already appears to be, but in the way that society shifts, it feels quite clear to me that we are trying to turn back time and go back to the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s after a generation where we tried to pretend things were not real, right? That your grandparents' world didn't exist anymore, that your parents' world didn't exist anymore. And now we're turning back the clock and going back to the era of the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s when by and large most people got along. And I was thinking about this in the context of social media because I shared over this week, race relations suddenly collapsed about 2014. I'm saying, what caused all this? Why did we suddenly decide, hey, let's put fat people in spandex? Let's put fat people in bras in the windows at Victoria's Secret? Social media. Social media came close to breaking this country. And everything that social media advocated for actually made things worse. Starting about 2014, overall happiness in this country collapsed. 30% of teenage girls suddenly want to commit suicide. Why? They're looking at Instagram. They've got zits and braces, and they're looking at Instagram. They're like, I'm so unhappy. They're seeing this world that doesn't actually exist. And it's not a faraway world. Like celebrities have always existed. It's, hey, whatever your life is, somebody in your school has a way better life. They went on a better vacation. They've got a better car. They look better in that dress. Gratitude is the enemy of competition. And suddenly, everything is collapsing. Black people, white people, suddenly race relations are collapsing. Why? BLM comes up and says, hey, The whole world's racist. Cops are unnecessary. Murder rates skyrocket. Violent crime skyrockets. All of it, I think, is connected directly to social media. And I think it broke the brains of lots of people. And I think society as a whole is paying the price, and we're slowly coming out of that fever and recognizing that everything that happened before 2014 was actually pretty good in this country, and we were on a good trajectory. And I think what Trump represents is that acknowledgement that America is the greatest country that's ever existed, and what we were sold was a bill of goods. Now, I got a big theory on this. I think the problem was people tried to be too responsive to social media, except social media is to real life what a Carnival Funhouse mirror is. You know, you stand in front of a Carnival Funhouse mirror back in the day, it makes you look fatter or skinnier than you actually are. It isn't reflective of reality. But we all know that, and that's what makes the Carnival Funhouse mirror make sense, because it's humorous, because it's showing you what you actually aren't. My argument is social media is the Carnival Funhouse mirror. Imagine if you adjusted your diet entirely based on what you saw in a Carnival Funhouse mirror. You would actually be making worse decisions for yourself than if you had never stood in front of the mirror at all. My argument is we're starting to come out of that Carnival Funhouse mirror era because the nation as a whole looked at the reflection we saw in social media and we thought it was the real world, and we started adjusting policy as a result. And I think it explains almost everything over the past decade. And that's why we got so much wrong. And that's why we're starting to fix so much right now. Want to talk about that more? We'll take some of your calls. Also want to tell you the IFCJ does incredible work. I want you to go to check out the work that they're doing right now. They're doing something very simple. They're just putting bomb shelters to try to save people from bombs. People of Israel have to constantly be rushing to bomb shelters. I saw it for myself. They constantly need so much in the name of just basic safety and security. That's what the IFCJ does. They are absolutely incredible. They're on the ground providing much needed supplies and resources, also letting them know they've got friends in America. All you need to do is go to supportifcj.org. My bad. That was the old website, ifcj.org. It's even easier, ifcj.org. Give the gift of safety to the people of Israel who need it desperately. You can call them to 888-488-IFCJ. That's ifcj.org, 888-488-IFCJ.org.